Welcome back everyone dito sa latest episode ng Deep Dive. Kasama natin ulit, of course, Senator Sonny Trillanes.
Hey.
Talagang it's a year of fireworks. Nagsimula kaagad ng fireworks. Literally, there was a major military operations just the other year. Your good friend, Marco Rubio, seems to be making the rounds. We can talk about the Venezuela situation. Yeah. Pero pag-usapan din natin, speaking of cartel, narco-style politics, pag-usapan natin yung case mo sa mga Duterte dynasty, sila Polong, sila Sara. Pag-usapan natin yun because it looks like last year they kind of got away with things kasi yung attention lahat sa administration, DPWH. So you could see that in the numbers, you could see that in terms of discourse. So pag-usapan natin yan. And then of course lastly yung favorite topic natin, Senator. Pag-usapan natin, how should the pink progressive forces come together? I mean, this is something I've been consistent about. But now, andito na tayo, 2026 na. This is the decisive year, I think all of us can agree this should be the year when big decisions should be made na wag na natin hintayin until next year because that will be too late. But before there, first of all, Senator, I mean, you are also someone, issues of West Philippine Sea, US-China competition, you have been covering these issues for quite some time. You met Senator Rubio back in the day. You're quite familiar, at least in terms of the thinking, the big picture analysis there, and of course yung national security strategy ng US ay lumabas din just the other month. What was your first read of the situation in Venezuela? Bago natin pag-usapan ano yung broader implications. Kasi immediately ang sinasabi ng tao, what about Taiwan? What about this? What about that? What is your read?
Ang initial takeaway ko dyan is ang US, when they impose their will on any country, pagka nakita nila na ito yung national interest nila, gagawin nila. So, normally, meron muna yan silang mga justifications for any intervention. They need to, gather support from different sectors, the international community, to justify any intervention like that. Pero in this case, talagang, siyempre, si President Trump, iba naman ang diskarte niya.
Yeah.
But it's still the same. It's not different from the Noriega
sa Panama
abduction.
Yeah.
So, nung time na yon, si Noriega naman was trying to control yung Panama Canal. National interest yan ng US. So, ganun din. They would come up with justifications like, yan, nag-involve sa drug trafficking. Ganun din si Noriega noon. So, ganun din dito. Pero, yun na nga, if they want to, they can. Yun ang message sa lahat ng mga dictators all over the country. You can be next, di ba? Yun.
I mean, you're an ex-military person. Of course,
Yeah,
Navy ka, but Army, Special Data Forces were involved, 150 aircraft. So this was both a kind of a surgical but quite a massive operation. From a tactical, logistical standpoint, Senator, what is your read of this? I mean, if you're Philippine Army or military today and you're looking at how seamlessly the US was able to just abduct within a matter of an hours, if not minutes, a head of state of a hostile state, there was a Chinese envoy in town when all this was happening. What is the lesson you draw, tactically, logistically speaking?
Yung importance ng intelligence, both human intelligence and signal intelligence. So, ito talagang na predict nila saan natutulog at this point in time.
Yung patterns of life.
Pattern. Yung lahat, pati yung security arrangements, makikita mo talagang malalim to. Siguro it spanned at least mga 3 months ang pinakang mabilis nito, but the early intel gathering, nagsimula pa yan months before. So yun yung doon mo makikita. And inintegrate nila yung technology with the military hardware that they have. Kaya precise, nakita mo, jammer muna sila.
They paralyze the command and control.
Lahat ng mga radars ng Venezuela na immobilize, na neutralize kaagad, so they were helpless. They were picked apart one by one. And doon mo makikita ngayon. Kasi yung technology na gamit nila ng Venezuela, Russia and China. Kaya doon mo ngayon makikita rin yung vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I mean, I was very curious about it. You were looking at like at least half a dozen S-300 missile systems, Russian systems there. There are probably some Chinese systems there. They were totally useless when the Americans used F-35, jamming systems, among other things. So if you're AFP now, looking at what Ukraine has done to Russia and looking at what US has done to the Russian systems dito sa Venezuela, wouldn't you be encouraged to say na, baka naman, we're getting the right training and the right weapon systems we have to acquire. Kung ganyan ka-seamless to just completely neutralize the Russian defense systems, Russian-made defense systems.
Yes, pero siyempre entry level lang ibibigay sa iyo. Dito mo makikita na while very open yung information about the US military capability, pero obviously meron pa silang tinatago.
Of course, yeah.
Na hindi nakikita ng
Secret sauce.
Oo, kaya dito dine-demonstrate diyan sa mga ganyan. Kung paano nangyari 'yon, 'di ba? Ni isang missile hindi nakagalaw.
No casualty, yeah.
Then yun sa ground level, syempre yung Delta Force naman, talagang ibang level ng ng operations. So almost seamless. They only got, I think, a couple of wounded Delta Force.
Well, there was unfortunate civilian casualties though on the side of Venezuela and port facilities and all.
Yes, yun na yun. Talagang, but from the US perspective,
no casualty.
it was seamless on their part. Dun sa ubos yung yung security team ni Maduro.
Na Cuban, I suppose. A lot
Oo,
of them, yeah.
talagang they were picked up one by one nung Delta Force on the ground. So talagang they do that. They've done that and they did it again. And they can do it again in the future. Pagka ikaw ay naging salungat ka sa national interest nila.
Let's speak of the bigger picture here kasi just 48 hours before, alam naman natin this operation was supposed to happen actually in Christmas time pa. But there was the Boko Haram operation, there was the bad weather conditions. So this came a bit later than expected, but nonetheless a fireworks for the new year. But nevertheless, a Chinese envoy was in town just a few hours before, kind of reassuring that China will be there. A Chinese tanker was able to evade yung gunboat diplomacy, whatever siege the US Navy is imposing there dun sa mga oil exports ng Venezuela. If you're China, what kind of lesson you're going to draw from this, tactically and strategically?
Palagay ko talagang they will really have second thoughts about confronting the US. Kasi ibang level yung ginagawa nga nila, confronting Japan, nag-hesitate pa sila. Ngayon, kung US, talagang iba yung nakita mo yung shock and awe approach nila. Kaya titingnan muna nila, syempre, re-reviewin nila, why did this thing happen? Diba? Bakit hindi nakagalaw? Bakit hindi na-trace? Ano yung pwede nila encounter doon sa jamming capabilities ng US? And so on and so forth. Kasi once they cross the line, kunyari dito sa Taiwan, tapos marami silang hindi nakita na mga gaps, baka ma-obliterate sila the way nangyari dito sa Venezuela.
So what you're saying, this is more of a warning shot to the Chinese, just like how yung time kay Saddam, di ba? Ang laki ng army ni Saddam, completely demobilized, completely shut down dun sa Gulf War, and the Chinese really took notice of that back then, yeah.
Akala nila, ang model nila, nang dinesign nila itong modern Chinese, yung
doctrine nila.
ang basis nila yung mga Gulf Wars before, di ba? They were trying to approach it that way. Siyempre, may mga modern equipment sila, may mga fifth generation fighters sila. But the whole system, integrated kasi.
Forces.
Hindi mo ngayon doon mo makikita na ang layo pa pala nila. And hindi lang yun for China. Even kay Putin, pa rin yun. It's also a warning shot sa kanya and the others, lahat na tipong we're still the big man in town, in capital.
At least militarily speaking. I mean, I think President Zelensky made some joke. Yung pala, ang dali lang pala kumuha ng dictator. Ano pang hinihintay nyo dyan sa Kremlin, di ba? But having said that, we know that as far as President Trump is concerned, it looks like if you have nuclear weapons like North Korea, probably you're still off limits for now, but that leaves Havana and many other actors still vulnerable. But Senator, of course tayo involved tayo sa West Philippine Seas, arbitration case. We are big on rules-based international order.
Yeah.
How are you looking at this? Is my understanding, ito ba yung argument yun na pag sariling backyard ng US, they're gonna do whatever they want. But as far as the international system is concerned, the US still has an interest in a rules-based order and therefore hindi bara-barang buong mundo. Kasi ang fear ng maraming tao is that this will open up a Pandora's box kung saan, ayun pala eh, I can do whatever in my own backyard. So China will do the same thing in Taiwan down the road. Russia will do the same thing. And then there's another argument is like, well, good luck trying to do that to Taiwan, which is very capable. This is not Maduro regime. And we saw with Ukraine, 1 million casualties were Russians so far. So whatever it's the rules of the game or psychological impact, this goes down to capability.
Yes, and I agree. I think ngayon yung mga analysts, mga think tanks are still assessing ano ba to? Ano yung implications nito? Pero one thing is clear. Yun na nga. If you ever cross the US national interest, ganun ang nangyari sa iyo. They can come up with any justification to impose their will on you at ma-achieve nila yung gusto nila ma-achieve. So, yan yun. Kunyari, yung kay Osama Bin Laden.
Sa Pakistan.
In the heart of Pakistan.
Military area.
They can operate doon. So, and
that was a nuclear country. I mean, Pakistan could not do anything about it. Yeah.
So I think on my end, maliwanag naman yun that the US is remains the global police. Siyempre, they will try to iaano nila, isusubdue nila ng konti yan, yung pag-i-impose na yan. Kaya, sige, habang kayang magkaroon ng international rules-based order, sige, para hindi sila, they don't need to do that every time. And that's also a good thing. Pero yun na nga, when push comes to shove, pwede nangyari na yan.
Sinampo lang din. I won't belabor this too much. I mean, J.D. Vance was not there in the press conference. People know that, although he released a Twitter in support of what the president did very strongly, but we know that J.D. Vance belongs to this wing of medyo, hindi naman isolationist, but like very, parang let's always think as force as a last resort in terms of foreign policy. Focus muna tayo on domestic issues, industrial foundations of the economy. But it looks like Secretary Rubio is emerging as like the Henry Kissinger of this administration. I mean, he's literally the only guy who's both secretary and national security advisor last time still I checked. Yeah. So that's exactly what Kissinger had during the Nixon days. And you could see the Rubio doctrine footprint all over this, although officially I think they're now calling it the Monroe doctrine, Donald Trump Monroe doctrine. From what you remember from your understanding of Senator Rubio and all of that, where do you think this is going? He's a very smart guy, without a question, whether you agree with him or not.
Si Secretary Rubio, talagang well-entrenched sa US foreign policy. At ito yung far-reaching foreign policy ng US. Kasi siyempre, di ba, si Donald Trump, ano lang naman to siya, medyo instinctive siya, di ba? Impulsive siya sa mga, tsaka domestic concerns.
Optics.
So itong mga foreign policy side, may kita mo na malaki influence ni Marco Rubio. And that's also a good thing na makikita mo na at least pinag-iisipan yung foreign policy, hindi yung kung ano na lang.
There's a method to the math.
But medyo medyo aggressive, di ba? Hindi yung policy of appeasement or sige lang, parang laissez-faire, sige, do your thing. Hindi, ito, they nip things in the bud. So, in the kumbaga, grand scheme of things right now in the world, baka yun ang kailangan para talagang mag-step back yung mga wannabe tyrants na gusto nilang magkaroon ng share of the pie. Ganon.
And also with Russia and China coming into Americas, right? I mean, that was clearly a justification for it. You want to take them out. You want to make sure Russia and China don't have a base of operation in America's own backyard. But obviously, there's also the personal Cuban connection here for Senator Rubio. Now, going back to the Philippines. Yes, please.
Let me just
Senator.
when I had this dialogue with then Senator Rubio back then about the war on drugs of Duterte, I was expecting that I would be the one to brief him on what's happening. Pero we didn't get to that part even kasi alam niya yung issues.
Lahat ng details.
Alam niya yung issues. So talagang doon na kami sa brass tacks na agad. And talagang he wanted to deprive Duterte of the weapons to oppress the people of the Philippines. So yun talagang kinat niya yung aid ng PNP that time. Pero he asked me kung pati ba yun sa AFP. Then I told him, no,
you vouched
please.
For it.
I vouched for the AFP na they didn't get involved in the EJ case. So sabi niya, it's a good thing that I was able to talk to you kasi I was really bent on cutting the whole thing. So binalik yun sa AFP, isa PNP lang. And ganun yung, ano naman nakita mo, hindi naman yung parang from the get-go, na kagad, punitive yung maraming steps.
Consultative steps.
I think they went through all those steps also with Maduro. In fact, based on what I read, they
cut the deal with the vice president.
No, even Maduro himself, they gave him a way out.
He was willing to negotiate.
No, they called Maduro and gave him a way out. You have to resign now and leave.
Turkey yata yung in-offer sa kanya.
Then, if not, then yun na yun.
So, nagsayaw siya Napikon daw si Trump. Sayaw ng
So, lahat ng diplomatic steps before they did that, yung military intervention, dinaanan din naman nila. And I think, kaya nga, it would give us a pause. Dati kasi impression, di ba? With the second term of Trump, parang magiging insular sila. Pero, ito na, ilang beses na. May intervention sila sa Iran, di ba? Tapos ito ngayon.
Nigeria even.
So, yan. Kaya hindi mo pa rin pwedeng sabihin na na sila, nag-isolationist. So, ando doon pa rin. And sabi ko nga, kailangan talagang merong global police Otherwise, there are evil elements in the world na pag nakakita sila may vacuum, they will step in. Nangyari na yan before World War I, tas World War II. Di ba? Pag kami vacuum, sige, tayo na.
Revisionist
Parang
powers,
sila na. So, ultimately, kailangan merong magse-set ng order.
This was like a tough sheriff, Wild West style. Parang there's a sheriff in town here. You want to watch out.
So what's going for the US right now is Maduro is no good guy, di ba? Talagang siya, ilang taon niya inoppress talaga. He ran the country to the ground. Dami naghirap diyan sa Venezuela.
With the biggest oil reserves in the world.
Tapos dami kumbaga umalis, 'di ba? Sa I think 8 million people lang na
refugees,
diaspora nila. So, doon mo makita na he's no good guy. Kaya when he was taken out, muted yung sympathy for him.
Yeah, although there was a lot of reaction to yung kanyang Nike ginawang commercial yung Nike, just do it. Grabe talaga. Meme capitalism tao. Lahat na lang ginawang meme, di ba? But yung pagsuot niya ng jumper and all. Nag-Happy New Year pa yata siya the other night and all in New York. So I want to bring this a little bit to the Philippines because one concern is, so far, this looks like a limited operation. First wave, maybe just enough. I think behind the scenes, surely there's negotiations with the minus Maduro Chavista regime. There's a suggestion that there was an inside split because masyadong Cuban dependent ito si Maduro. Marami na inis sa kanya. So basically, they dumped the guy. and that now, because my leverage on US, they can still control the oil of the flow, they'll cut some sort of an modus vivendi with the remaining regime. And I think the President Trump was very honest na parang hindi siya believe dun sa opposition na they're in a position to take over because they still see the militaries there. Iba pa rin kasi yung ground and militia operations from, aerial special forces operations. So one worry is if that modus vivendi doesn't work, eventually US will move towards a ground invasion or operations, and then there could be civil war and something worse. And then there's another way of thinking is, the other risk is, what if China says, okay, let's learn from this the same way we learned from the Gulf War, and then maybe not do it to Taiwan, but do it to seemingly weaker countries like the Philippines. Do you think that's something we have to look at? I mean, if US can do it to Venezuela, given the asymmetry of power, why not China do that? Maybe not now, maybe not 5 years from now. Let's say 10 years from now, we have President Trillanes, right? Very strong against China all the way in. You're the Maduro to them. What if they will think about doing something like that?
I will not rule that out, but I think yung China would be more deliberate doon sa kanilang expansion, if you may call it. Hindi yon basta-bastang magkakaroon sila ng adventurist mindset. It would have to be incorporated in their long-term strategy because that's how they justify their existence. Yung kanilang modernize, pag-arm, di ba? Yung kanilang arms race, meron justification. So, ganun sila Ganun
yung statecraft nila.
Oo, hindi sila bastang may dictator na tatayo. Gusto ko dito tayo. Parang, whimsical.
Yeah.
No, sa kanila is
deliberate.
Oo, medyo part of their long-term planning. And at least medyo predictable. But I won't rule that out, yung sinasabi mo. But I think by then, well-entrenched na yung mga EDCA, mahirap naman gawin yun.
So you think that precisely should be the reason for the Philippines to not only prepare for a war in Taiwan or war in West Philippine Sea, but also against decapitation, and I think the term that decapitation kind of strategies against the Philippines.
Yeah. Yun ang...
And US can teach us a lot because they're doing that to other countries, right?
Oo. And for example, dito sa AFP, tingnan nyo rin yung mga countermeasures nyo yung ginawa kay Maduro. It may not be the US who would do that, but for example, China. Hindi tingnan nyo anong pwede nyong gawin. Siguro kailangan. I'm sure meron namang mga bunkers din dyan.
Right.
Pero yung kay Maduro, biruin mo, dadali na siya dun sa safe room niya. Hindi na dala So, ganun kabilis yung...
Right.
Oo.
And the intel part. The infiltration
part,
is very important. Talagang infiltrated kasing system sa Venezuela. So that's a lesson for us, right?
Palagay ko, doon sa security team mismo ni Maduro, may mga dyan, agents na yung US. Yun ang mga nila.
Lessons not. Yun nga, like I'm just saying, like there are a lot of Filipinos who are cheering on this and saying, see how strong US is. And I'm saying, but what about the Chinese will learn from this and try to do that to us maybe 10 years from now or 15 years from now? Because we'll talk about the Dutertes very shortly. Because if we manage to avoid the return of Dutertes, it looks like the direction of the Philippines is similar to Taiwan, Japan, and potentially even Australia, which is go stronger with the US. As China becomes more powerful, that's going to be the natural reaction from some of the other countries being threatened by China. So you could imagine the Chinese strategists would say, what if we'll also do decapitation in Taipei or Manila and all? Just take out the top guys there and then cut a deal for de-escalation or something like that with the guys below. So that's why I raised that possibility, because no one is talking about it as much.
Yes, but I don't think they would be able to survive the blowback after. Kasi iba naman yung US na parang they've been doing this intermittently throughout history. Whereas China, 'di ba? Meron pang pretension sila about peaceful rise. Ngayon pag ginawa nila 'yon, sira na talaga. Talagang mabigat yung yung retribution doon. And I think basta iba magiging global reaction sa China. Yun.
And just lastly on this before we transition here to the Philippines, also connected din siya. Senator, yung aspect ng infiltration, because clearly there was pure infiltration in the system. Some would even say baka may nag-shutdown pa nga ng command and control center. It was not just being bombed and paralyzed. May mga nagsi-switch off pa nga eh. What is the lesson? Because now a lot of reports are coming out about infiltration efforts by China dito sa Pilipinas. How worried should we be about not only a pro-China president or Manchurian candidate, but actually infiltration of our institutions, regardless of who's the president on top, or yung infiltration sa LGU, especially yung mga LGU na may EDCA bases, or facilities, or LGUs na medyo frontline at mahalaga sa atin?
Actually, ano talaga siya? We need to really prepare for that. And may mga measures naman dyan yung counterintelligence agencies natin within the AFP. And I remember nung late 90s when I was still in the Navy, may isang Navy commander who was selling military secrets sa
leak siya.
So na huli yon, na try yon. Hindi pinaputok yon publicly. Pero I remember that. Nasa DND siya naka-assign.
1990s.
Mga late 90s, mga early 2000s, yun ang pagkakaalala ko. At na-detect. And tinutulungan din naman tayo ng US. Yung US, nalalaman din nila
kung may galawan.
Kung may galawan, kung may mga nagbebenta ng information o kung sino yung nakukuha nila dun sa mga double agents sila, dun sa ibang...
Na-infiltrate din ng kabila.
Yun. So, binibigay din yun. Then, we are being informed about it. Ganon yung nangyari dun sa particular officer na yun. So, I think it's in place naman yung ganon. But, kailangan, tayo, very conscious. And, very active yung recruitment dito sa But, ang nababalitaan natin, yung China, ang inuuna nila yung mga citizens nila, yung mga Filipino-Chinese organizations, yan. Then,
potentially sympathetic.
Yung United Front activities, more sila doon than recruitment ng mga officers dito. Kasi unang-una, wala naman tayo gaanong military secrets to keep di ba? Kaya nga ayaw din tayo bigyan ng mga sophisticated weapons ng
US kasi baka ma-leak din.
Kasi hindi pa gaanong yung ating
counterintelligence,
document security, operational security, hindi tayo ganong ka-conscious. Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. I think we have to be real talk on that. No, if you want to get the best weapons, you have to assure them that those best weapons will not end up in the wrong hands. I mean, like in the case of Afghanistan, Taliban has now some of the American weapons, some of them crossed the border into the other side. So they learned some very tough lessons from that in the past. But at the end of the day, we want to get the best weapons possible for our own national security and all of that. So, Senator, transition tayo na ngayon sa now that we're done with our geopolitics, Kissingerian talk, doon naman tayo sa ating Game of Thrones dito sa Pilipinas. So Senator, you have been very strongly reminding the people na do not lose sight of the Dutertes. Yes, there are disappointments, there's a lot of shortcomings with the current administration. They missed their self-imposed deadlines with delivering big fish, Diskaya aside. We're still waiting for Boying Remulla to give us an idea sino mga senador or congressman ang potentially makasuhan in terms of yung probability of certain conviction. But Senator, can you remind again people why are you so focused on the Dutertes when it comes to these allegations of corruption and all of that? And what are your expectations in the coming days and weeks? Kasi mukhang mabilis ang galawan ngayon this 2026.
Ako kasi, single-minded ang focus ko, which is sa 2028 na hindi makabalik yung mga Dutertes at hindi mapatalsik si President Marcos at umupo si Sara Duterte. So yun yung focus And I'm doing everything to make sure that doesn't happen. So marami na yan. Kasama na dyan mga kinakasuhan ko sila para hindi na sila eligible. Dahil...
Just to be clear, this is based on the evidence of wrongdoing, not for a political agenda, right?
Yeah. And ito, Bakit ko ginagawa ito? Kasi we have seen
Yep.
the Dutertes in power up close for 6 years. Nakita natin how much they abused power. Inoppress nila yung tao. Dami nilang ginibang institution, dami nilang pinatay ng mga Pilipino. Nag-set up sila ng criminal enterprise for themselves. Tapos, di nakita natin yan. Ngayon ang tanong, gusto ba nating pagdaanan ulit yan? Di ba? Siyempre yung man on the street, oblivious sila, ano? It's either kung Duterte supporter sila, nakita lang nila, or nagbubulag-bulagan sila na to say na itong mga mabubuting side lang nakikita nila.
Shadows on the wall, kumbaga.
Yeah. But doon sa mga mulat, nakita yon at lahat ng red flags, lahat ng dangers sa ating demokrasya, sa human rights, even sa negosyo, yung mga negosyante, no? Talagang ayaw mong pagdaanan ulit yun. Kaya yun yung determination ko. That's where I'm coming from. Kaya pag may, even sa mga progressive forces na sinasabi mo, yung mga middle forces na parang ano lang sila, oblivious sila sa mga ganito, parang they're just fine kung manalo si Sara, they're fine. Even that, I get, I get pissed off.
You think there's a complacency, or you think there's a naivety na Sara Duterte will not basically spell vengeance and total crackdown on ano bang sense mo dyan? Is there complacency, siguro, naivety? What's
they're just too distracted about the day-to-day living. Parang hindi sila capable of looking beyond the next 2 weeks. Di ba? Iba yun eh. Kailangan nakatingin ka doon kasi tumatakbo yung oras. It happened to us before, noong 2022. Di ba? Ngayon, hindi na pwede mangyari yun. Kailangan, siguraduhin natin na yung preferred candidate, yung makakabuti sa Pilipinas, yun yung mananalo. Kaya nga sinasabi ko na lang, buti na lang, nakachamba na lang tayo na we were fearful of a Marcos victory noong 2022. But now, nung nirestore ni President Marcos yung democratic space, edi yun na nga, nagkamali tayo ng assessment. Chamba na lang yun. Pero ngayon, to gamble, to roll the dice on Sara na she may not be that bad, napaka kalus na natin, or masyado na tayong complacent.
You're asking for trouble. Let's go back to President Marcos, because yung isang criticism is, yes, the Dutertes, we know what they meant and what they could mean if ever they returned, but that should not make you turn a blind eye to the shortcomings of the Marcos administration. In your opinion, what is probably you're thinking there's a glass half full, glass half empty. Do you think some people are not giving enough credit? I mean, at the very least, President Marcos admitted there's corruption. There was at least an ICI. Nowhere close to the ideal situation, but from 0 we went to at least at 5 or 6. What are your expectations this year in terms of the president delivering on some of the promises in terms of transparency? Like, how's the budget looking after yung BICAM naging more, at least officially transparent? And do you think the president is also doing enough to make sure mga tunay na big fish will face justice?
Let's go first dun
budget.
dun sa yung criticism about the okay. Kagaya mo ang sinasabi ko nga, given na yan. Di ba? Nandiyan na to ang Marcos administration hanggang 2028 siya. Ngayon, I'm not stopping everybody or anybody from criticizing the Marcoses. Pero they cannot expect me to cover yung 2028 scenario natin, deal with the Dutertes, and do this thing at the same time. Di ba? Criticize the Marcoses. Gawin nyo naman. Di ba? Kumbaga, hindi naman lahat idadump nyo sa akin. When minsan sinasabihan ako na bakit hindi ko daw kinikriticize yung
okay. So this is personal criticism of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sa akin, bakit kailangan bang ako pa rin yan?
Yeah, you're choosing your battles.
Yes, I'm
right?
choosing the bigger battle.
Yeah.
Kasi ito, palagay ko kaya nyo na yan. And even si President Marcos is open to criticism.
Yeah.
And sige na, di ba? We just deal with the nightmare scenario that is confronting us itong 2 years from now. So, yan yon. Ngayon, doon naman sa how they're dealing with the flood control scandal or the corruption. I agree with you, Richard, na well, to the credit of President Marcos, nilabas niya di ba? Siya nag-initiate itong mga investigation. Siyempre, may tama siya kasi talagang nangyari. But it's better than not addressing this problem at all. At least, by 2028, if we're fortunate enough na may matinong presidente, hindi na starting from scratch or talagang masyado malalim ang problema. So that part, pero work in progress pa kasi wala pa tayong nakikita na kukulong, di ba? Sabi naman ni Ombudsman Remulla, within the first few months of the year, mangyayari yun din. Antayin natin, di ba? May proseso talaga
You don't think they're like Mickey Mouse negotiations or take out si gano? Because that could backfire, right?
Yes.
I mean, that could give an excuse to other people who want to bring the whole thing down.
I would like to believe wala pa sa ganon. Kasi hindi pa naman lumalagpas doon sa timeline Kasi pag kinasuhan ka, part ng due process, sasagot ka, di ba? O counter affidavit, may mga
tsaka airtight dapat yung kaso.
Rejoinder. Ang haba niyan. May mga extensions until magpa-file ng case. Wala pa sa ganong, hindi pa naglalapse yun So, antayin natin yon pag naglapse na yun. Ngayon, doon naman sa yung sa budget.
So, budget issue, yeah.
Okay,
Like,
sa budget issue. I always maintain na yung budget, walang corruption nangyayari sa budget. Yung budget is your, kumaga, main guide kung paano mo, saan mo ilalagay yung mga pondo. Ang pinakang corruption nangyayari doon sa implementation. The moment kumuha ka ng komisyon, o whether advance yan, o kung ano man, yun na yung corruption. Pero hindi mo makikita sa budget yan. Ang nangyari ngayon dito kasi, because of the parang lynch mob mentality na tipong, ito, ikaw, gano'n, di kinukuyog kang gano'n. Na, ang nangyari ngayon, kung ikaw senador or ikaw congressman, na meron kang advocacy na genuine, honest to goodness advocacy, that may be hard to believe sa mga nakikita. But there are good congressmen there. There are good senators there.
Yeah, we have Senator De Lima, who's now in the Congress. You have Senator Risa. There are good people there. We cannot deny that,
Kung meron lumapit sa yung munisipyo na nagsabing kailangan namin ng eskwelahan, ng mga classrooms kasi nandoon na sila sa puno ng mangga, anong gagawin mo? You will turn away from that, di ba? Ikaw ang supposed to be boses ng taong bayan, di ba? Congressman ka, kung nangyari sa distrito mo yan, it is your obligation to push na magkaroon ng eskwelahan doon. Yun yung advocacy mo, di ba? Ano pang gagawin mo doon? Hindi mo pwede sabihin, nako, hindi ko pwedeng itulak yan kasi pupulaan ako ng tao. Kailangan maintindihan ng taong bayan na ang congressman at senador, mga representante sila ng taong bayan. Sila yung boses ng taong bayan sa national level. Kung congressman ka at nakita mo kailangan ng tulay dito para yung mga estudyante hindi tumatawid ng ilog, obligasyon mo yon na itulak na magkaroon ng tulay doon. So, kailangan mo mag-allocate ng pondo ron. Ngayon, kung nangumisyon ka dun sa kontratistang gumawa nun, yun ang kailangan, yung kakailangan maparusahan. Pero hindi mo makikita sa budget yun. Yun. Doon mo makikita kung ano ang mga proyekto ng national government down to the local executive. Hindi yan makikita ng mga DPWH. Sasabihin na DPWH na lang yung unang-una, hindi sila halal. Hindi sila representatives of the people. Kaya wala silang they cannot be compelled to put a bridge there o kung saan kasi they don't have their feel on the ground eh. Yung congressman, yung mga halal, sila yon. Kaya ang pwedeng gawin dito is yung gawin natin yung kailangan end user. Merong barangay nagre-request ng itong project, municipal level, then dadalhin nila sa congressman para kumpleto yung buong procurement process. Hindi yung ano lang, minamagic din lang ng mga congressman minsan. O maglagay dito ng tulay, ng daan papunta dun sa hacienda niya. Di ba?
Yeah.
Oh, so
you want to remove the arbitrary, yung kumbaga may veto points ng mga congressman, legislators na pwedeng may mga mangyayaring kababalaghan. But at the end of the day, they should be coordinated with the executive. Engineers should look at it, experts should look at it, right? Hindi lang mga politiko sa kongreso.
Yes, ano naman yun eh. Lahat naman may, kunyari sa mga munisipyo, meron sila mga municipal engineers. Sila magde-determine kung ano talaga yung kailangan. Then, pag pinopose mo yan sa national government, eventually, titignan nila kung part yan ng municipal development plan. So, imamatch na nila yun doon. Pero meron kasing mga infrastructure projects na talagang hindi nakikita because hindi siya apparent or yun na nga, meron nga mga batang tumatawid pa ng ilog eh. Tumatawid ng ilog, papunta lang sa eskwela.
Yeah, you've seen the documentaries.
So, paano yun? Who would be the one who will push for that bridge to be built there?
Do we need a new system kung saan, kasi may yung participatory budgeting, ginagawa ni Pinoy, nangyari yan sa Brazil, other countries, kung saan even yung mga ordinaryong mamamayan, meron silang say dun sa mga priorities na nakikita. Kasi yung super on the ground ay civil society, mamamayan. So meron kang levels of consultation and coordination until solid yung buong project. And then transparent din siya. You can check what's the development of the project, who are the contractors, what is the bidding. What is the ideal consolidated, transparent process kung saan ma-allocate ang tamang pera sa tamang proyekto na walang kalokohan na nangyari? Is there some system you can think about?
Kailangan kasi talagang gamitin natin yung mga halal ng bayan. Whether ang assumption nito, corrupt naman sila lahat. Kaso that's the system we have eh. Pag sila yung binoto, barangay captain, alam nila kung ano yung pangangailangan ng lugar nila. Then sa munisipyo o city hall, dapat alam nila kung ano yung pangangailangan ng. So sila sa kanila magaling yung request. Then ganun din yon sa congressman, sa kanila i-compile nila yon sa lahat, sa buong distrito nila yon. Then sila ngayon magiging bosses nun sa representatives. Ngayon, kailan papasok yung tao? Doon sa implementation. Doon nyo bantayan. So, from the bidding process hanggang sa implementation, doon sila magbabantay. Pero hindi pwede kasi yung sinasabing participatory governance. Maganda lang yan theoretically, pero pag implement mo sa ground, it can be ano ba tawag nito?
Infiltrated, co-opted.
Oo. Basta they can game the system still eh. Ang pinakang dito is pwede siyang konsultahin. Siyempre, yung taong bayan din naman yung kukonsulta. Yung barangay captain, kailangan sensitive siya sa pangangailangan ng mga constituente niya.
Yeah.
So pag in-address niya yung pangangailangan na yun, edi pagka na-deliver niya yun, edi he can be assured of a re-election. Yun. Doon sa municipal level, ganun din. Dapat makikita nila yon. Yung taong bayan, yung mga watchdogs, doon sila sa implementation. Ito yung mga projects dito sa lugar na to, dito sa barangay na to. Doon yung ngayon titignan kung ginagawa nga ba talaga. Kasi wala tayong magagawa dito. Ito yung sistema, di ba? I believe the system is okay. The problem is the people running the system.
So you have to vote more responsibly, basically.
Ganun talaga yun.
But no additional safeguards. I mean, because some people are also yung sinaslice yung budget, line budget. Tapos maraming mga kalokohan nangyari little here and there. What about those aspects?
Kasi nga, ang pananaw ko, even nung panahon ni Duterte, kahit opposition ako, Pero hinahayaan ko yung budget niya. Bakit? Kasi yan yung ang mekanismo ng isang presidente para ma-deliver niya yung serbisyo sa taong bayan. Ang binabantayan ko yung implementation. 'Di ba? Kasi doon nagkakaroon ng nakawan. Pero not the budget per se. Kung ang priority niya education, makikita mo doon. Kung priority niya infrastructure projects, makikita mo doon sa budget. Pero wala ka pa makikitang doon nakawan. Kaya I question yung mga nagsasabing this is a corrupt budget o hindi corrupt budget. Kasi budget lang yan eh. Parang budget sa bahay. Ito para sa kuryente, para sa baon, ganon. Wala pa yun eh. Papel pa lang yun. Pero pagka sinabi mo dito, bayad mo sa kuryente, 2,000. Pero ang kuryente mo lang pala, 1,000. Yung 1,000, binulsa mo. Eh di doon na sa implementation yun.
That's where you see more the problem than the whole process of allocations and determination of allocations.
And pwede yan, mache-check na, ayusin natin yung auditing processes. Yung COA, kailangan natin armasan sila.
Linisan yan. No?
Hindi lang sila financial audit. Kasi yung COA natin, nagiging financial auditors lang ang papel-papel. They don't go out to the projects anymore.
To double check,
Kailangan nila ng technical audit capability. Kailangan makikita nila kung gaano kakapal yung semento na nilagay dun sa kalye. Kailangan yung mga mga sheet file na nilalagay, gaano ba kalalim. They should have that capacity. Wala silang ganon.
Na on-the-ground project assessment.
Puro auditors, puro CPA yung nandiyan. Financial auditing sila. And ang galing ng mga
numbers.
Oo, mag-manufacture ng mga papel. Na perfect na nila yan, yung bidding-biddingan.
Yeah.
On paper, makita mo, there's everything is in order. Pero doon mo makita kung substandard yun,
So maybe public accountants, civil engineers, civil society restaurants, they can work. They can have a kind of a multi-agency and also kind of a
yung mga watchdogs na gano'n. Tapos, ako, I've been proposing, tanggalin yung mga resident auditors eh. Yung resident auditors kasi na, let's say, nako-co-op sila o nako-coerce sila. Pero pagka, rotating sila, niraraffle kung ano yung audit nila. Di ngayon, they can do their jobs dispassionately and without fear or favor. They can...
And their budget also, problema, we had Heidi Mendoza also on this platform. She was saying na, minsan parang binubuli yung mga COA people sa Senado or sa Kongreso. Yung mga senador na tinamaan nila, bubulin sila sa budget and all. So, you need fiscal autonomy, not only capability upgrade.
Yeah. Supposed to be may fiscal autonomy yung COA. And kailangan mo talagang taasan yung sahod nila, yung
recruitment level,
yung capability nila expand. Kasi naging dekahon na na financial audit lang sila eh. Hindi dapat. They should be there on the field. Technical audit ang mas importante dito. Kasi kung meron ganon, wala mag-ghost project. Kasi, mabibisto ka agad eh. Pero pag financial audit, makakalusot pa sila. Ngayon, yung reason kung ba't nga tatanggalin mo yung resident auditors, pag meron lang silang district offices, iraraffle mo lang doon. Ngayon, hindi alam nung mayor, congressman, kung sino yung lalagyan nila para hindi sila magkaroon ng disallowance o suspension. Whereas kung may resident auditor, kaya nilang suhulan. Kaya nilang, kung hindi nila masusuhulan, pinapatay yung ibang mga COA auditors. So, yun yung mga proposal ko na sinubmit ko dati.
So, using that logic, your framework, what's your problem with Pulong's 51 billion? There's nothing wrong with the allocation. The implementation is where things went wrong.
There's something wrong with the allocation kasi hindi siya equitably distributed. Kailangan yung national resources equitably distributed based on the population or the needs, di ba? Kaya hindi naman kunyari may population ka, malaki population mo, pero progressive na kayo, moderno na yung inyong lungsod, doon naman dun sa mga nangangailangan. So that's the equitable distribution. Ito hindi eh. 51 billion na yung Davao City. Ang laki-laki pa nung era niyan ng Davao City. Hindi ma-justify yon. So that alone may problema doon. Tapos, physically, impossible magkaroon ka ng 51 billion pesos ng project dyan sa isang distrito na yan.
Yung absorption capacity.
Absorptive capacity. Tapos, yun na, hindi lang. But yung physical limitations of the area, maliit lang siya for a 51 billion peso budget. Yun.
And that's where you think something fishy happened.
And meron talaga.
Ebidensya.
So, oo.
So what are you expecting? Like, what about the other projects of Duterte's? When Sara was the mayor, what about those projects? Not to mention things she has been... Kasi may kaso na sa kanya for her DepEd tenure. Pero she was also a mayor during Digong's time. What about the budget implementation allocations back then?
We will be filing a case na naman this month. No? We'll be filing graft cases against Sara Duterte. Again, doon sa mga ginawa niya. Kasama na doon nung
DJ case?
Nung mayor pa siya. Graft cases.
Graft cases to, yeah.
So, yun. Maraming ginawa silang mga illegal krimen. At yun yung paraan ko para mamulat yung mga tao, yung mga moderate supporters niya, even yung diehard supporters niya, makita nyo na hindi lang ito salita-salita lang, kundi mga documented.
Kasi black ops na naman kasi takot daw kayo sa kanya na manalo na naman siya sa 2020. That's always their line, diba? These are black propaganda lang yan.
Hindi, yung black propaganda kasi is salita lang, social media. Pero pag finailan ka ng kaso, documented yan. I cannot fabricate documents and evidence kasi pwede ko makasuhan noon. Diba? Pwede ko makasuhan. Pero yan yung mga ginagawa para nga doon. And dapat matakot tayo na kung mananalo si Sara kasi gigibain yan yung Pilipinas. Yun yung hindi naiintindihan ng mga maka-Duterte. Pero siguro kung magre-reflect sila, tignan lang nila yung sarili nilang buhay. Doon sa 6 years ni Duterte ba, umasenso ba sila? Gumanda ba yung buhay nila? Di ba? Ang gumanda lang ang buhay yung mga Dutertes. Naging bilyonaryo sila. Lahat. Many times over. So yun. Until they can grapple with that reality na nabudol sila, magkakaproblema tayo.
Do you think people have been forgetting that? Kasi Sara's number obviously are not as high as before. I mean, the Duterte used to be 95% approval, whatever, right? Even in Mindanao, we see some slight movement there. But nevertheless, ang layo ni Sara kay President BBM in terms of approval ratings and all. I mean, first of all, I don't know what are they approving of. Wala naman siyang ginagawa. But having said that, hindi ba parang nadidistract din ng tao? I'm not talking about the DDS. I'm talking about the 70-80% of the population are not with them. Do you think they're distracted from also the other side of the coin? While everyone is looking at what's happening in DPWH. And, I mean, just looking at the case of Yusek Cabral, the late Yusek Cabral, right? I mean, her rise to power was really during Digong's time, right? A lot of projects of this guy started during Digong's time. And yet people talk as if all of this corruption is just the last 2 years, 3 years, or it's just the 2025 budget, which was the worst ever and all of that. Hindi may parang imbalance, asymmetry, and that's actually helping the cause of the Dutertes?
That's exactly what happened. I think, yan naman yung pagkakamali ng ICI. They had the opportunity na imbisigahan ito from where it started.
Yeah.
Nung panahon
2016, yeah.
Kung chronological yung kanilang investigation, hindi ganyan na magiging
yung PCIJ kasi nag-release. I mean, klarong-klaro sa PCIJ. The Diskaya companies, all of these dodgy companies, dun lumobo suddenly.
Even Bernardo, even Cabral, dun sila. Yun yung heyday nila eh.
Exactly.
Kaso ngayong ICI,
purong latest lang,
ako feeling ko, dahil is either takot sila sa mga Dutertes or kasabwat. Ako, I'm ready to get there. Kasama na itong sina Babe Singson and kasi binibuild up na parang mga maayos na tao. Kasi kung maayos sila, dapat doon nila sinimulan. Bakit di nila ginalaw? They were there, yung 2 commissioners na nag-resign. Bakit hindi nyo pinatawag si Bongo? Bakit hindi nyo in-insist na humarap si Pulong? Tapos bakit si Bernardo?
Si Sandro pa yung pumunta.
O lahat pumunta except si itong mga ito. 'Di ba? That makes you question eh. Kaya ako wala akong believe sa kanilang lahat, pati yung mga nag-resign. Hindi ako believe dun sa mga yon kasi they had the power, they had the opportunity. Ayusin na natin to. Kailan to nagsimula? Si Bernardo, itinalagay yan ni Bongo noong 2017. Hindi ba material yon?
Even the Zaldicos and the Eric, I mean, lahat yan, mga paano hindi go ng kanilang rise to power.
Oo. So, yun na yung nangyari. Kaya nangyari ngayon, tinamaan si President Marcos. Parang it's as though sa term lang niya nagsimula ito. So yan ngayon ang backlash niya. Ang pagtitignan mo naman doon sa, ako tinitignan ko, hindi naman yung net yung approval. Tignan mo yung approval. 38 kay President Marcos and 56 I think kay Sara. Mababa yon for Sara na wala ka na nga, na-spare ka na nga sa mga tapos 56 ka na lang. And I remember nung panahon nung kay Binay noon, before we started the investigation against him, umabot siya ng mga low 80s, high 70s ng mga panahon na yon. Preference yun Hindi yon approval rating, kundi voter preference.
To be the next president, potentially.
Oo. Yeah. Tapos yung mga kalaban doon, kasi 5-way race yung ginagawa namin, 4-way race, 4%, 3% lang yung iba.
Yeah. Runaway
so
winner.
Talagang runaway winner. Pero nung namulat sila, the people started turning away from.
Pero yung problema, di ba, natuto yung mga DDS kaya inattack yung Philippine Daily Inquirer, That's why they attacked the media, right? Because it was the media that exposed the Binay era anomalies, right?
ABS-CBN.
Exactly.
So, yun ang ginawa nila, binanatan nila yung mainstream media, tapos pinalakas nila yung social media nila, kaya they can reach the deep corners of the archipelago. Samantalang yung admin hindi na-reach yun. So na-game na nila yung system, but we still have time to counter these things.
And space to attack that. So this goes down to basically the ombudsman now at this point in time, because the ICI came short. So what is the way forward? Ombudsman, and not to mention, Ombudsman Remolio just mentioned the other day, malaki rin ang corruption sa judiciary. Without casting aspersions, some people are finding it very suspicious that in the past 12-15 months, ang daming na acquit bigla sa Sandigan Bayan. Was it because the previous ombudsman didn't do an airtight case? Was it because pinabayaan? Or is it because maybe the Sandigan Bayan dapat bantayan? What's going on here?
It's a confluence of all these factors. Kasi doon pa lang, yung mga investigador pa lang sa ombudsman, meron ng parking fee na babayaran mo para hindi nauusad yon. Hindi inaakyat sa taas. So, iba't ibang levels yung corruption. Then, if at all na ipa-file nila, then yung incompetence naman would kick in. Kasi nilalamon sila ng mga dekampanilyang mga abogado.
Yeah.
Yung mga nag-hear dito, talagang they cover so much ground. Kaya, judicial reform also is
very important.
Is called for at this point. Pero that's for another time. Kasi kailangan yan, mag-a-appoint ka ng mga maayos, then bibigyan mo sila ng resources para ma-insulate na hindi yung nila survival wages
For lawyers, especially.
For lawyers
na,
kailangan bigyan natin, ma-entice natin yung mga maayos na abogado through good pay, di ba? And protection. So, I proposed also yung creation ng marshal service para meron, aside sa pag-administer ng mga notices o kung ano man, kailangan ito yung security din ng members of the judiciary, kasama na yung ombudsman. Sila nagpo-provide nun. Kasi ang hirap kunyari, ikaw nililitis mo isang drug lord, tapos uuwi ka sa inyo, di ba? Driving by yourself. Delikado yun. Mawawalan ka ng confidence to
your job, basically.
To do your job. So, yun.
So, yung vulnerability nila and compensation nila. Yeah.
Then, you need to start picking good justices, yung maayos talaga yung background. Hindi yung alam mong fixer, kaya mo nilagay kunyari sa Supreme Court, hindi fixer talaga yun. So, maraming gagawin. But, very basic pa yung problema natin, yung kinakaharap natin ngayon. Ngayon, moving forward, I would recommend, no? Kung sa admin, I would advise them na bigay na lang nila sa ombudsman yung paglilitis na. So that they can focus on delivering yung kanilang mga pinangako sa taong bayan. Kung legacy mode sila, para yun yung makita ng tao. Kasi pagka nag-hands-on ka dyan, tapos kinakapos ka,
Right.
yung corruption ngayon talaga nag-stick sa'yo. Imbis na yung services na talagang yun naman dapat ang priority mo, ito naman collateral duty lang dito na naipasa mo na sa ombudsman. So yun na yun. Yun yung moving forward kailangan nilang gawin para makarecover sila dun sa mababang rating sila.
Before with the last part of our discussion, Senator, in terms of what should happen with the middle forces in the coming weeks, kasi February is expected to be a big month in the every sense of the word. Etong ombudsman, do you entertain the argument na the ombudsman could potentially help trigger a new round of impeachment against Sara? Or is that even sensible at this point in time? Given that by February, mawala na yung time limit, malift na yung time limit in terms of refiling of impeachment against Sara Duterte.
Okay, I know for a fact, Richard, na pine-prepare na yung impeachment case para kay Sara. The moment mag-lapse na yung 1-year ban, ifa-file yun. So whether the ombudsman would have a part in it or not, mangyayari yun.
But it gives it credibility, right? If the ombudsman acts upon all of this evidence and all of that. Yeah.
Yes. But yun na nga, it's independent of that. It's an independent action. And based on the Supreme Court ruling,
New rules,
magkakaroon ng hearing sa
Congress mismo.
Congress
Plenary
mismo.
ka agad.
O ngayon, di doon pa lang, lalabas na ito. Yung mga bank accounts na to, ano yan exception to the rule yan. Sa bank secrecy law, lalabas na yan. And by the way, meron nang nahawakan yung ombudsman dati, galing from AMLAC. At yun na nga yung ginamit ni then overall Deputy Ombudsman Carandang to say na talagang parehas o similar doon sa inattach ko doon sa aking plunder case kay Duterte.
Right.
So, yun, lalabas yun sa House pa lang. Kumaga may mini trial na mangyayari doon pa lang. At hindi ka madidistract ng mga Duterte senators.
Mga abogado niya.
Abogado niya. Sila Marcoleta, sila Aimee, kung sino-sino. Hindi sila makaka-intervene doon. Di magandang opportunity yun. Makita ng tao na hindi lang to sinisiraan. Mga kurakot yung mga Duterte. And
killers. I mean, that's why nasa ICC yung isa. I mean,
Oh.
the ICC vindicates you, right? I mean, you have been saying this for a long time.
Yes. Pero yung iba kasi, gina-justify pa yun na okay lang naman pinatay kasi mga masamang tao yun. Hindi nga hindi nga, mali nga. Tapos, bukod pa ron, ito, ginagawa lang niya kasi nga, pinoproteksyonan niya yung drug lord niya. So, they set up their own cartel. So, excuse me, hindi niya nakita yon. Hindi nila nakikita yon. Plus, makikita nila yun doon sa bank accounts. So, hopefully, mamulat sila doon. Ito, 56 ang approval niya, vulnerable yon.
Anyway, she came down at one point significantly last year.
Last
year, sorry.
Conducting a survey within the next few weeks para makita natin yung bagong baseline na ito. New year, so new baseline, we'll see kung saan yung mga lagay ng mga different personalities. At ito, scenarios yung gagawin namin, hindi lang yung long list na labo-labo.
Senator, of course, we discussed this in the previous 2 episodes last month, but balikan natin, eto na, this is 2026 na. February could be a big year where a new impeachment could come up. There's going to be EDSA-related celebrations, among other things. Do you think this is the year, or make it or break it, in terms of at least determining the mechanisms by which kailangan ba ng primaries? Kasi my understanding, Senator, is, as we speak, different potential candidates from the middle forces are already getting the ball rolling, talking to potential sponsors,
Yeah.
whether tycoons, whether civil society groups, position na sila in terms of projections online, in terms of analytics. You have seen also some of my parang Ezra Klein style. Okay, if ito yung president, ito makita natin, I've made the case for Riza, for BAM, for different people. For you, I'll make also that case also, Senator. No, I mean, I'm just trying to make sure people know we have options.
Yeah.
No option is perfect, but we have many good options. As I said, it's you, Risa, Bam, Kiko, Lenny, whoever it is. But we still have to, it should be one, right? Hindi
Yeah.
pwede ma-split yan eh. Even John Vic, the other month, na biglang suddenly is also open to be the standard president. Pati siya, aminado siya, it cannot be a split vote. Otherwise, babalik talaga mga Dutertes.
Okay. Well, to begin with, I'm taking myself out of that race. Ano? If there's a role to play for me, it's to bring the Dutertes down. And talagang I have embraced that role. So okay lang ako. Ngayon, ang meron ng mekanismo, meron ng selection committee, at least as far as the middle forces are concerned. Kaya nga sila nagpo-posturing, maganda yon, that's a good thing. Ibig sabihin, nagpe-prepare sila. And part of that, yung pagka nagpe-prepare itong mga by talking to potential donors para makaikot sila, different sectors, alam nila yung importance nung
Early
2020,
preparation.
nung 2028. And that's a good sign for these candidates na may sense of urgency sila. So, maganda yon. Pero, part of the mechanism is magkakaroon nga ng survey, di ba? Internal survey. So, kung sino sa kanila ang pinakang viable compared doon. At itong mga ito, sila yung open. Hindi pwede yung nag-decline ka o wala kang kumaga, kung nag-decline ka na, hindi ka na isasama doon. Kasi kailangan, you must want this. You must want to serve the country.
And face the
as
risks and
president.
dangers.
Oo,
Yeah.
kasi, alam mo yung magiging presidente sa 2028, hindi ito walk in the park. Hindi ito parang, papasok ka sa isang paraiso.
Yeah.
Hindi. Ang daming political forces at play. The Dutertes will remain there. Very potent yan. Tapos mga bata pa yan sila. Even if they don't win now, 2028, sa 2034, they can still be
May next
in
generation
play.
pa. May Omar, may Kitty, may Digong the
Kumbaga,
second.
hanggang doon, hanggang kingdom come yan. So,
Thracian warfare.
yeah, kaya kailangan kung ma-expose na sila this early, or pagka nanalo, di ba? Then, make them accountable. At least matutuldo ka na yun. So, yung presidenteng papasok, kailangan may intestinal fortitude to face all these challenges. Kasi hindi peacetime president yung next, yung president sa 2028. Kaya importante yung kailangan proactive, hindi pwedeng passive. Ganon.
Wow, the very constructive. I like this. But you see where I'm coming from, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm just throwing out the nest and let's
okay
get the
yun.
ball rolling, and then
Maganda
mag-decide
yun.
na tayo kung anong way. And you're
let me just add,
please, Senator.
so, yung assuming makapagpili na yung middle forces, Richard,
Yes.
the next step is how to forge a coalition with the
Other forces.
Marcos forces in particular. Kasi that's the only way. Kung three-cornered fight ito, one for the
Admin.
the Dutertes, one for the admin, and one for the middle forces,
Mananalong Duterte.
mananalo yung Duterte. Kasi solid yung kanila sa Mindanao. Pero kung mag-join forces itong dalawa, from the get-go, malalamangan nila yung, si Sara Duterte.
But wouldn't that undermine the credibility of the middle forces, considering you still have around 40% of the population who are unaffiliated and are not necessarily happy with BBM, at least given the 30% approval that the president has? What about them? Isn't it important you win over also that 40%? And therefore, any new unity should be calibrated, at least in terms of optics.
Pagka dalawa kasing magsasama kayo, mas marami kayong magpo-poach doon sa unaligned. As I mentioned during your last vlog, 4 yung bloke, di ba? Duterte, admin, middle forces, and yung
Non-affiliated.
non-aligned, yung no affiliation. So, pagka nagsama ito, yung pag-poach nyo rito, ganun. Mas marami kayo magpo-poach dun sa...
Ma-amplify yung ability niyo to recruit new...
kasi person to person,
Yeah.
ang most effective way of recruitment. Kung mas marami kayo, di mas marami doon. We've done that before yung isolationist mindset natin, purist mindset. Hindi nangyari. And hindi ka naman, ito pa, ang po-provide pa nung admin is the resources and the machinery. Yung mga LGUs, they would have a way to communicate with them. So, basta find a common ground. Ano ba yung mga gagawin nating reforms? Ganon. Then, yung mga issues na medyo mabigat o touchy for both sides, wag na muna, galawin. Then, focus lang doon sa common program of government that you can agree on. Then, hindi naman imposibleng mangyari yon. That way, you can guarantee victory. Then you can serve. Kasi mas importante, di ba? Ano ba mas importante? Yung purity nung ways mo. Hindi nga yung intentions, yung ways mo. Or yung makapagsilbi ka sa bayan para masimulan mo na yung reforma na hinahangad mo noon pa. Di ba? Kasi pag natalo ka, no matter how you say na, well, at least hindi ako nakipagsanib persa sa kanila, basta't ako lang yung magaling. Ano ka ngayon? You see our country being run by the people na kinalaban mo, 'di ba? Kasi nga you felt na you had a better program that you'd be able to make a better difference in the lives of the people. Kaso out of pride, hindi mo ginawa yung kailangan mo gawin para manalo. Yun.
To be fair though, Senator, I think since we were having this discussion January 2025, late 2024, it looks like people are kind of getting what's going on here. So the conversation is no longer that, kailangan ng may counter coalition and all. I think the conversation is that, okay, how do you do it in a way na comfortable lahat? I mean, imagine if an Aquino is the standard bearer. Let's say, bam, okay, let's spell it out. Do you, like Aquino, Marcos together, and they say we're moving forward? I mean, wouldn't there be some tension, some difficulties there? Or if it's Riza, who's known as very progressive and strong against the Marcos dictatorship legacy, wouldn't that be also a little bit tricky? So I think now the discussion is moving to a more mature, tactical, positioning optics kind of discussion. And then more importantly, you keep on mentioning survey. I'm going to have discussion again with folks from Okta and W Numer and other survey agencies also later this week, which is, ano bang alam natin dun sa 40% na yan? Kasi parang medyo, hindi naman black box. But we still have to figure out ano bang pumipitik sa kanila eh. Because at the end of the day, we can have all the debate among ourselves and us, Duterte, ganun. Pero at the end, we have to win over the majority of Gen Z, millennials, and that 40%. So yung dalawang issue na I want to end on this because I think this is very important na we're now more maturing towards, okay, how should this look like, this coalition building na palatable to both sides, doesn't alienate core bases from both sides, unless your argument is no, the existential threat is clear, but I don't think everyone is also that realistic, unfortunately. And then the second part is, shouldn't we have more studies and proper analysis of anong pumipitik dito sa 40% at kabataan na yan? Because they are the key to victory.
Okay. Una, doon sa pagiging open doon sa possible coalition.
Or should they be open? Or?
Ito, alam mo yung mga ganitong discussions, ganito sa vlog mo, sa podcast mo, na-open eh. Yung mga listeners mo, yan yung medyo mga politicized segment of society, marirealize na, no? Sige nga, subukan. Then eventually, kasi even whether it's BAM or RISA, yan naman yung supporters sila. Once naging open yung supporters, the core supporters, the base, magiging open. Yun lang naman eh. Just sit down, ano ba yung red line sa inyo, ano yung non-negotiable. Ultimately, yun na nga, do you want to serve this country? If that's what it would take to serve this country, then cross the aisle by all means. When was in the Senate, ang dami kong gustong ipasang batas. I needed to cross the aisle. I did. Si late Senator Miriam, gusto ko ipa-expel niyan before. Pero talagang niligawan ko siya, so
Yeah,
to
you
speak,
reached
para
out,
lang makuha ko siya. Kailangan ko siya not as an enemy, but as a supporter doon sa mga advocacies ko. And si late Joker Arroyo, ganun din.
Coalition building.
So mas importante sa akin yung advocacy than yung petty quarrels namin. Di naipasa ko mga batas. I think ganun din naman yung titignan nila Bam and Risa dito. Na ano ba mas importante sa atin? Yung ano na yan? Yung tags na yan? Labels na yan? Or yung mga pagsilbi tayo sa bayan? I think the Marcoses would be very much open to embracing a middle force candidate, di ba? Para lang, kasi nga existential eh. Yung alternative is destruction of democracy. So do you want that? No, so hindi. Then let's work together. So yan, that's one. Doon naman sa yung ano tong what motivates itong 40% na ito. Unang-una, part nung survey namin is i-define yung affiliations
Yun
nila.
nga, yeah.
Saan ka ba? Di ba? Duterte ka ba? Marcos? Ganito, ganyan. Tapos, titignan natin, ngayon, kung dito ka, saan mo ba kinukuha yung informasyon mo? Di ba? Ano yung mga aspirations mo? Kumbaga, ano yung mga gusto mo na prioridad ng isang magiging presidente ng Pilipinas? So, more behavioral yon.
Yeah.
Voter behavior yung aspeto na yon. Pero yung critical, yung affiliations. Para ma-define na natin talaga, ilan ba yung maka Duterte, ilan yung maka Marcos, ilan yung maka middle force, tapos ilan yung wala silang pakialam sa politika. Then, doon na natin yung next experiment natin, next intervention natin, doon na natin ipapasok. Yeah.
On that note, thank you very much, sir. That was a fantastic conversation. Parang kahit 5 hours, we can just keep on going on that. But this is good. That was quite a constructive conversation. We went from Caracas to Quezon City.
Yeah.
Right? So that's quite a wide range.
Wide range.
Let's cover Greenland and the next episode. Salamat, Senator. Thank you very much again, everyone, for joining us for this latest episode ng Deep Dive. Of course, dun sa mga nanonood sa atin ng live na nagko-complain baka if the audio is not perfect, don't worry. We're gonna get the edited proper version also soon out, so don't worry. Mas makita niyo lalo ang the clarity at saka the compelling interventions ng ating special guests. And of course, don't forget to join us for upcoming Deep Dive episodes. Marami tayong mga episodes to discuss the different aspects of anong gagawin natin sa ekonomiya, anong gagawin natin sa politika, not to mention on our foreign policy. And later on, we're also gonna have Justice Carpio to discuss also the ombudsman issue, judicial reform issues, important issues na dapat natin tatalakayin. Maraming salamat and see you soon.